Hey everyone, welcome to our first episode of Davenant Shorts. We talk to about 15 lecturers from Davenant Hall or Davenant Institute, which is kind of the broader umbrella of Davenant Hall, which is the educational arm of Davenant Institute. And I have Tim Jacobs here, and he's going to talk about his Aristotle Seminar 1. And so we're going to talk about these and talk about a bunch of different courses with a bunch of different lecturers. But first, I want to ask you, our very first question is, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became a Davenant Hall lecturer.
Yeah, good question. I did my undergraduate at California Baptist University, and there I studied philosophy and came attracted to an ethics focused on virtue, which eventually would find out is really the historic Christian ethic. But after that, I went to Southern Baptist Theological Seminary for 5 years and got my MDiv and my THM. And for so much time in seminary, I actually wasn't super interested in theology. Like I was
Hmm.
doing it in order to get my, foundation as I
At a
planned.
theological school, not interested in theology.
Well, I wanted to make sure that I was well grounded before
Oh, yeah,
going
I'm just giving
on
you a hard time.
in philosophy. Yeah, but part of it is because of the way that theology is often taught. It's very much focused on just exegesis and often proof texting. However much they caution against proof texting,
Sure.
largely theology stops with like, oh, this is what the Bible says, without asking the questions that I was asking in philosophy. So I always wanted to do philosophy and theology together, and I felt basically isolated and alone in that. Um, and after pretty much eventually finishing up my PhD studies and sort of looking around for a job, and uh, a lot of COVID stuff was going on, and secular schools were becoming even more hostile to Christians teaching there. I was kind of in a pretty deep sort of funk,
Hmm.
feeling isolated, like I feel like I'm studying, biblical stuff here and historic stuff, but like, is there anybody out there who's doing the same kind of work? And that's when I discovered Davenant. And it's just emphasis on recovering and renewing sort of Protestant scholasticism. And that drew me into reading some of the early reformers and realizing like, oh, like these are like-minded people. So that's really the ethos of Davenant is bringing together, this, we're not just a bunch of isolated islands out there as different scholars or students or teachers who are studying this stuff, but to bring people together and to be involved in, I think, something of a movement, a sort of a classical resurgence in theological education. So
Awesome.
that's what brought me here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So furthering into that, if you caught a student, a prospective student in an elevator, and he's like, Tim, Dr. Jacobs, I don't know where I'm going to go for seminary. I don't know where to go for theological education. What makes Davenant Hall unique? Why should I go to Davenant Institute? Why should I go to Davenant Hall? Why is it unique, or how's it unique amidst the landscape
Yeah.
of higher theological training?
Yeah. If you want a classical theological education to be trained to be like Augustine, Luther, Calvin, Edwards, if you want to do theology like them, then come to Davenant.
I like
We're
it.
training people to be like that,
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
to just memorize things. Yeah, good.
That's good. That's a good 30 second. I like it. It's a good 30-second pitch.
There you go.
So, I talked about this earlier. What are you teaching this term, and then why that course specifically?
Yeah, so well, our Trinity term coming up is April 8th through June 15th. I'm going to be teaching Aristotle Seminar 1, Ethics and Metaphysics. Aristotle's philosophy. It's quite influential for the formation of like the Nicene Creed or the historic development of systematic theology. Early Christians appropriate a lot of his thought in order to develop what we now consider pretty taken for granted doctrines. And I think these principles, I think principles that we learn from a deep dive into Aristotle still have a lot to teach us today. Besides just showing us how it has informed theology, I think the principles we learn help us in our day-to-day discernment of activities.
Sure. Yeah. So, all the nerds out there, the new Aristotelians who are like, oh man, what am I? Sounds fun and stuff, but give me a little teaser. What am I going to read? What am I going to engage with in this course? So tease them a little bit about what they're going to see and read in this
Yeah,
course.
great. So we're going to focus on the philosophy of the human person and how ethics arises from understanding human nature. So broadly speaking, natural law. We're going to dig deeply into actually doing, not just defending that this is like a good idea, but what exactly does it mean? What are the exact principles? What is ethics? What is good? What does the word good even mean? What does evil even mean? Oftentimes we just sort of assume those kinds of things. How does what we are as humans, as the image of God, how does that relate to our ultimate end, our day-to-day discernment of our circumstances, and how to process and think about ethical situations. So that starts from understanding metaphysics of what a human is. And so we're going to be doing seminar style discussions in our class, and we're going to be doing close readings of Aristotle's works on the soul, metaphysics, Nicomachean ethics, and politics. We're not going to be able to read the complete book for each of those. That would be way too much, but we're going to
Yeah.
do key excerpts and substantial excerpts so that we can really get into the meat and bones. And actually, as a nice follow-up class in the summer, I'm going to be teaching a class on Stoicism and Epicureanism. These came after Aristotle, and they were widespread in the Roman Empire by the time of Jesus. So we're also going to be reading some historic texts to see how the New Testament authors and later Christians engage those philosophies. So both of these classes kind of help us to narrow in and clarify what it is that the New Testament and that Christians throughout time have been communicating in our ethics.
Heck yeah. So last question. What do you or how do you hope, just like you were saying earlier, this is Protestant scholasticism. This is how Calvin, Luther, Augustine, they were taught, that they developed, how they do their theology. So students are like, this is awesome. I would love to be like Calvin, Luther, Augustine. This is great. But how do you hope this course shapes your students even more than just inform them?
Yeah. So, the result of both of these classes, or honestly any Davenant class, is to gain a deeper, more principled understanding of, in this class, biblical metaphysics and ethics, and even a little bit into political theology. And the point is, you've heard the saying, give a person a fish, feed him for a day, and teach them how to fish, feed them for a lifetime. Well, a lot of times, we're just giving people fish. We're telling them this is the answer, but that's not going to help, 5 or 10 years down the road. What we want, our vision is to train thinkers to have these timeless principles and understand how to apply them in different circumstances. And so, so that's what we're going to be doing in this class, particularly on ethics and human nature.
Awesome. Cool. So those who are listening, just like he said, Trinity term is beginning soon. It starts April 8th. And like I think he said before recording, the registration closed on the 1st of April. So April Fool's Day. So don't be a fool.
Around that time, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Registration is already open.
Gotcha. So yeah, you gotta register for your course. And if you're a GGG listener, if you use GGG Trinity, all lowercase, 24 and you're a first time Davenant Hall student, you get $25 discount on auditing. If you want to become a student too, I'd very much encourage students also. But thank you for coming on for this little Davenant short, Davenant short, and talking about Aristotle, about the class class you're teaching, about what students can learn, what they're going to be engaging with, and how you hope to form and shape them. Thanks for coming on.
All right. Thanks for having me.